Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The wind on Kestrel 9 didn't howl. It counted. It clicked its frozen teeth against every seam in Jalen Marr's suit, tapped each buckle and zipper like a patient auditor, and when it found a weakness, it slid in with the cold precision of a scalpel. His visor display tried to be helpful. Temp, 61 degrees C wind. 83 kph exposure limit, suit integrity current. 14 minutes sounded generous until you remembered that time had to be spent moving and thinking, and the second one always stole from the first. He stumbled behind a jag of basalt that rose from the ice like a broken black fin. The ridge gave him a few degrees mercy. Not warmth. Kestrel 9 didn't do warmth this far toward its night side, but less direct violence. Behind him, the downed lander was a shallow crater of steaming snow and twisted composite. Their beacon antenna lay half-buried, pointing accusingly at the sky as if it could tattle on the universe. And out on the flats, half-covered by drifted powder, the alien lay curled like a dropped question mark. Jalen's breath fogged the inside of his helmet. His fingers inside insulated gloves felt like someone else's hands attached as an afterthought. He checked his suit battery, checked his med patch kit. Checked the world, he checked her. "Usal," he said into the comm, though he knew she couldn't hear through the storm and the ice. Her translator puck was still clipped to her collar, miraculously intact. Hey, stay with me." She didn't respond. Her outer cloak, woven from something that looked like layered leaves, had stiffened into a brittle shell. Frost outlined the curve of her back. The spines along her shoulders, usually erect when she was alert, lay flattened like wilted grass. He had been warned before the survey mission. Veiny physiology is cold-adapted but not cold-proof. Their blood uses antifreeze proteins, their tissue resists ice crystal formation, their metabolism slows safely. It sounded impressive until you read the small print. They cannot generate significant internal heat. They survive by avoiding loss, not by making more. The lander's heater module was dead. The emergency shelter had burned in the crash. The nearest outpost was 2 days by foot, even with a working snow skimmer. Jalen had a pack, a suit, a half-charged thermal liner, a sleeping bag rated for Martian nights, and he had 14 minutes of suit integrity before the wind found the crack near his left elbow and turned his arm into a useless ornament. He knelt beside her, using his body to block the worst of the gusts. The snow was so fine it squealed when it shifted under his knee. "Usal," he repeated, and this time he reached for her shoulder. The moment his glove touched her cloak, the material shuddered and shed a thin layer of ice like dandruff. Underneath, he felt how still she was, not dead, not yet. His suit's medical scanner, an embedded patch on his wrist, blinked and tried to make sense of her biology. Heart activity, low temp, surface. 3 degrees C consciousness, uncertain surface temp 3 degrees C at 61 degrees C ambient meant her cloak was doing something right, but the wind would eventually win. "Okay," he muttered, voice shaking from adrenaline as much as cold. "Okay, shelter now." He looked back at the basalt fin. Behind it, the snow drifted in a way that suggested a hollow, a natural pocket where the wind skated over rather than through. Not perfect, but better than open ice. He slid his arms under Usal carefully. She was lighter than he expected, bones like aerated ceramic, her body wrapped in layers meant for graceful movement, not survival after a crash. Her head lolled, and the frill at her neck fluttered in the wind like a surrender flag. He carried her. 14 minutes became 10. 10 became 7. When he reached the hollow, he lowered her onto a patch of snow that his boots had packed down. He tore open his pack with clumsy fingers and yanked out the sleeping bag. It was bright emergency orange, shaped like a cocoon. It looked absurd against the monochrome landscape, like a child's toy dropped on a battlefield. He shook it out, then cursed as the wind tried to steal it. He pinned it with his knee, unzipped it, and guided Usal inside as gently as he could. The bag swallowed her. It also swallowed hope because the bag had been designed around a human body. Even with Usal's narrower frame, there was empty space. Empty space meant air. Air meant convection. Convection meant the wind's accountants would do their math. Jalen stared at the bag, then at his own arms, and then at his suit display. Suit integrity, 62% exposure limit. 9 min he thought of the outpost, warm lights behind thick glass. He thought of the briefing officer's tone when she'd said, "Do not overestimate your heroism, Mar. Space does not reward it." He thought of Usal's laugh in the shuttle, a sound like pebbles sliding in a stream when she'd tried coffee for the first time and declared it aggressively alive. He unsealed his helmet. Cold slapped his face so hard it felt like being insulted in public. His eyes watered instantly. His nostrils flared and froze at the edges. He sucked one careful breath, then leaned over the bag and hissed, "Translator, wake!" The puck on Usal's collar clicked. A soft tone sounded. A moment later, a voice, flat, synthetic, spoke into the hollow. "Link established." Jalen forced words through numb lips. "Usal, you hear me?" Inside the sleeping bag, something moved, a slow twitch like a dream. The translator pulsed. "I hear wind." Her voice came through broken, but it was her. Jalen swallowed, throat burning. "We crashed, heaters gone, you're hypothermic. I'm going to share the bag with you." Silence. Then faintly, from within the cocoon, a sound like a startled inhale. The translator rendered it as a single word, sharp as a snapped twig. "No." Jalen blinked against tears that froze on his lashes. "No, Usal, you're freezing." The sleeping bag shook, not violently, but with the controlled tremor of someone trying very hard not to panic. The translator spoke faster now, catching up with her rising pulse. Do not place yourself inside. It is ritual. It is binding. It is not casual." Jalen stared at the orange cocoon as if it had suddenly started making moral judgments. "Binding," he repeated, like a contract. "Like claim," her voice cracked on the translator's speaker. "Like nest, like we become." Jalen's brain tried to process that while the cold tried to chew it. He laughed once, a short bark of disbelief that instantly turned into a cough. "Usal, I don't care what it means where you're from. I care that you're alive." The bag stilled. Inside it, her breathing slowed. Not because she relaxed, because she was shutting down. His suit display pinged with a new alert. Core temp drop detected, frost risk. High, he didn't have the luxury of alien etiquette. He unzipped his suit down the front and wriggled out of the upper portion, leaving the thermal underlayer and the boots on. The wind bit his exposed fabric like it was tasting it. He shoved the suit shell aside in the hollow to block more wind. Then he grabbed the sleeping bag zipper. Inside, Usal's claws, small but sharp, scraped against the lining. "Stop," she rasped. "Stop, please." Jalen's fingers shook as he opened the bag wide enough to slip in. He spoke softly because he didn't know what else to do with the fact that she was afraid of his kindness. "Listen," he said, If your people have rules about this, we can argue them when we're not dying. Right now, we have two choices. One, you freeze alone. Two, we share heat and you live. I'm choosing two. He slid into the bag. It was immediately, undeniably, uncomfortably intimate. The space became tight. Fabric pressed against him from all sides. Usal's body was curled near the bottom, and when his leg brushed her thigh, scaled, cool, trembling, she flinched as if struck. She made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a growl. The translator tried to interpret it and failed, spitting static. Jalen adjusted, trying to give her room without opening gaps. He pulled the bag's hood tight around them both, leaving just a small opening for air. His bare face was now inside a pocket that smelled faintly of recycled nylon and alien spice. The scent of her cloak crushed into the lining. Her temperature was shockingly low. Even through his underlayer, her skin felt like river stones in winter. He pressed his palm against her back, not rubbing, not moving too much, just contact. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Usal did something that made Jalen's spine go rigid. She shifted, slowly, deliberately, and placed her forehead against his sternum. Her frills spread stiff with frost, and she exhaled onto his chest. The translator spoke, the synthetic voice suddenly thick with something like awe. "You are burning," Jalen blinked. "I'm a normal temperature." "No." Her voice was stronger now, as if proximity to him was fueling her. "You are sun, you are forge, your blood runs fast." The bag warmed almost imperceptibly, not because the environment changed, but because their bodies were now a closed system. His heat had nowhere else to go but into her, and the bag trapped it with stubborn efficiency. Usal's trembling began to lessen. Then, without warning, she wrapped an arm around his waist. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was a grip. Her fingers, 3 long digits with small talons, hooked into the fabric of his underlayer and held. Jalen tried not to react. Told himself it was instinct, a freezing creature grabbing the nearest fire. But then she spoke again, and the translator didn't stutter this time. "By right of shelter," she said, voice clear, "you have entered my winter." Jalen swallowed. "Okay, you have given heat." Her breath now came warmer against his skin. "Heat is life, life is oath." "Usal, hush." Her grip tightened. "You did not ask, so the rite is unfinished." Jalen frowned despite numb cheeks. "Unfinished how?" She lifted her head. In the dim light of his wrist display, he could see her eyes, large, glossy, a deep reflective black that caught tiny points of light and turned them into stars. Her pupils were slitted like a predator S. The sight should have made him nervous. Instead, it made him realize she was awake, very awake. She raised one hand slowly and placed it on his cheek. Her skin there was warmer now, not warm, but no longer deathly cold. Her touch was precise, almost ceremonial. "On Vena," she said, "when one shares the winter skin, when one permits another into the sealed warmth, there is either marriage," Jalen's throat went dry, "or war." He stared at her. Those are the only two options." Usal blinked, unblinking in that alien way that made each pause feel deliberate. "Yes," Jalen managed, through a haze of cold and exhaustion, to laugh again. "That's insane." Usal's frill rippled, and the translator offered, "I am told humans have something called dating." "That is also insane." He couldn't argue that. Outside the hollow, the storm counted and counted and counted. Jalen's suit shell, propped at the opening, rattled. Snow drifted in like powdered glass. The sleeping bag held. He exhaled. "Usal, I'm not trying to marry you." Her fingers slid down his jaw. "And I am not trying to war you." That's great. Yet, she said it softly, like a warning and a joke in the same breath. Jalen closed his eyes. His body heat was bleeding into her, and he could feel the effort of it, like running a marathon in slow motion. He needed rest. He needed to keep their air pocket open. He needed to not die. Look, he said, forcing his brain to stay on track. We need to survive the night. We'll send a beacon at first light. Rescue will come. Usal's gaze shifted to the small gap at the hood's opening where the world beyond was a blur of white violence. First light, she repeated. How long? Jalen checked his display. 8 hours, maybe 10. Usal made a soft sound. The translator hesitated, then rendered it as, gratitude. He blinked. What? She lowered her head again, resting against him. Your people are strange. You hoard heat in your bodies. You waste it on others. Jalen stared at the bag's ceiling, at the frost crystals forming where their breath touched nylon. It's not wasted. Usal was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, it was so low the translator had to amplify it. On Vena, she said, winter is not weather, winter is identity. We measure ourselves by what we can keep alive when the world wants everything quiet. Jalen listened, and the story in her voice wasn't just a cultural lecture, it was a confession. My brood sister, she continued, died in a storm when I was small. We were traveling between hearth caves. A stranger offered shelter. My mother refused. She said the right is dangerous. She said warmth can be a trap. Usal's fingers flexed once, still gripping him. She was right, Usal whispered. Warmth is a trap. Jalen frowned. How? Usal's eyes lifted again, and now there was something in them that wasn't fear, it was calculation. Because, she said, once you know what it feels like, you will crawl through ice to find it again. Jalen's stomach tightened, and he realized the shock in the title premise wasn't just her reaction. It was the fact that in saving her, he'd stepped into a system of meaning he didn't understand, and she did. Outside, the wind counted. Inside, heat became language. Hours passed in shallow dozes and jerks of wakefulness. Jalen drifted, then snapped awake each time the storm slammed the basalt or the bag shifted. Each time he woke, Usal was closer, not because he moved, because she did. Her body, starving for warmth, had oriented itself around him as if he were a gravity well. Her legs were tangled with his. Her arm was locked across his ribs. Her forehead remained pressed to his chest like she was listening for proof of life. At some point, he felt something else. A faint vibration beneath her scales, a humming like a cat purring if a cat had swallowed a tuning fork. He looked down. Are you vibrating? Usal's eyes opened. In the dim, they seemed almost amused. Antifreeze glands, she said. They activate when I am in shelter. That's good, right? It means I will not freeze. Her frill twitched. It also means you have become my shelter, Jalen sighed. Usal, she lifted one hand again, slow, careful, and traced a line across his underlayer where his skin pulsed. Your heart, she murmured, so loud. It's working hard. It is working. She sounded impressed, the way someone might admire a machine that refused to break. Your body is a furnace that repairs itself while running. Jalen couldn't help a small, tired smile. Welcome to humans. Usal's expression, hard to read on her face, shifted. The translator offered a decision. What decision? He asked warily. She stared at him with unsettling steadiness. The right, she said, it demands completion. Jalen's mouth went dry again. Define completion. Usal's fingers slid to his wrist and turned it gently, exposing the inside of his forearm. He tensed. Hey, hush, she repeated, not harsh, certain. With her other hand, she reached into the folds of her cloak, still inside the bag with them, and withdrew something small and curved, a sliver of bone or polished horn sharp at the tip. Jalen's heartbeat spiked. "What is that?" "A vow spine," Ussal said. "Mine, it was meant for trade, for ceremony." He tried to pull back, but her grip tightened, not painful yet, but unyielding. "Ussal, we are not doing alien marriage in a sleeping bag." Her eyes narrowed. "Then war?" "Neither." For the first time, her voice rose, and the translator carried the edge of it like a blade. "You do not get to give winter heat and then pretend it is nothing." Jalen froze, not from temperature this time, from the raw, almost desperate truth under her words. He exhaled slowly. "It's not nothing, I just didn't know what it meant to you." Ussal's frill lowered. The purring vibration beneath her skin softened. "I know," she said quietly. "That is why it is dangerous." She held the vow spine poised above his skin. Jalen stared at it, then at her. "If you do that, what happens?" She looked almost shy for a fraction of a second, an expression that didn't fit her predatory eyes. "It marks you as shelter-bound. It tells my people you are under my protection." "Protection," he repeated, "not ownership." Ussal tilted her head. "On Vena, those are close." Jalen huffed a laugh despite himself. "Figures." He considered the alternatives. Reject her ritual and risk her turning this into war in whatever cultural sense that meant, later with witnesses, with consequences. Or accept a mark that might simplify things when rescue came and the Veni authorities inevitably asked why a human and a Veni were zipped together in a single survival cocoon. He swallowed. "Fine," he said. "Protect me." Ussal's eyes widened slightly, and her purring deepened. She pressed the vow spine to his forearm, just enough to prick. A sharp sting, a bead of blood. Then she did the shocking part. She leaned down and licked the blood away. Jalen's entire body went rigid. Her tongue was warm now, warm in the way a living creature is warm, not the way fire is warm. The gesture was intimate and efficient, like sealing a letter. The translator spoke with reverent finality. "Rite complete." Jalen stared at the sleeping bag ceiling, at the frost crystals, at the tiny universe of condensed breath. "Ussal," he said hoarsely, "did you just—" "Yes," she replied, completely calm. "Now my people will not take you." "Take me where?" "From me." Jalen blinked. "Oh." It took him a second to realize that the me in that sentence wasn't romance. It was survival. She wasn't claiming him because she wanted him like a trophy. She was claiming him because, to her culture, warmth was a resource guarded by law. If others learned a human could generate so much heat, they might decide he was too valuable to leave unregulated. And she had decided, quietly, fiercely, that he was not a resource. He was shelter. Outside, the storm began to thin. The wind's counting grew less confident, as if the universe was reconsidering its audit. In the gray pre-dawn, Jalen heard it first, a distant thrum, low frequency, almost lost under the remaining gusts. Engines. He fumbled his comm with numb fingers and opened the sleeping bag hood wider just enough to see the sky. A rescue craft, sleek, angular, cut through the clouds like a knife through cloth. Its searchlights swept the ice in wide arcs. Jalen felt a surge of relief so strong it made him dizzy. He raised his wrist beacon and triggered the flare. A green pulse shot upward. The rescue craft banked immediately. Inside the bag, Ussal's grip tightened again, not in panic now, but in resolve. "They will ask," she said. Jalen's teeth chattered. "Yeah." They will not understand, she warned. Jalen glanced down at the small mark on his forearm, already clotting, already fading into a simple puncture. Then we explain. Usal's eyes gleamed. We tell them the truth. And what's the truth? Jalen asked, half afraid of the answer. Usal pressed her forehead to his chest one more time, like listening to the human furnace that refused to go out. The truth, she said, voice steady as bedrock, is that humans do not merely survive winter. Her frills spread, not stiff with fear now, but wide with something like pride. You share it. The rescue craft's spotlight hit the basalt fin, turning the hollow into a sudden stage. Shadows fled. Snow glittered. Jalen raised a hand to shield his eyes. He felt Usal shift beside him, and for a moment he thought she might let go. Instead, she lifted her head and called out into the light in her own language, sharp, ringing, unmistakably authoritative. The translator Puck, catching the last of her words, whispered to Jalen, "Shelter bound, protected, mine to keep alive." Jalen laughed, breath steaming, tears freezing, alive in a world that wanted quiet. "Yeah," he murmured back. "Same." And somewhere in the storm's fading count, Kestrel 9 learned a new number, 2.